Hello and welcome. Now, counting of votes is underway in Pakistan, and cricketer turned politician Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or PTI seems to be enjoying a comfortable lead over all others. Latest trends from unofficial result indicate that Imran Khan's party is leading on 112 seats, while its main rival Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz or PML-N trails far behind, leading on just 65 seats. PTI supporters began celebrating as trends indicating the party's success started to trickle in. A party leader, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, while addressing the media, said that the results are a reflection of the people's will to give Imran Khan a chance to rule. But in order to form the government, a party needs to secure at least 137 out of the 272 directly elected seats. 60 seats are reserved for women and 10 for minorities, taking the total number of seats in the National Assembly to 342. That's where the role of Pakistan People's Party or PPP assumes significance. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's party was leading on 43 seats and could emerge as the kingmaker if, and this is an important if there is a hung assembly. Meanwhile, various parties have questioned the integrity of the election results. PML-N spokesperson Mariam Aurangzeb alleged irregularities and said that the results were not acceptable to her party. All right, joining me live from Washington is Michael Kugelman, Senior Associate, Woodrow Wilson Center. Michael, thank you for sparing time to be on WION. Now, the election results are not officially been declared yet, but the early leads indicate that PTI will emerge as the single largest party. Now, PTI, according to initial leads, is 113 seats, PML-N 64, and the PPP 43. How does the arithmetic stack up for you?
Well, I have to say I'm quite surprised. I think many people, including myself, could have assumed that PTI would emerge on top, but not necessarily by getting this many seats. And of course, we're not done yet. As you noted, I think we're just at about 50% of the votes counted at this point. So I'm quite surprised. And of course, that raises questions. Certainly, critics of the PTI would suggest that that very impressive showing would suggest that there could have been a fair amount of rigging, that the army could have been involved in efforts to help the PTI. But of course, supporters of the PTI could say, well, look, this proves that we really are a popular party, and we have really been able to win over a number of key constituencies, particularly in Punjab, to bring us to this point. So, got to say, the bottom line is I really am surprised about how well it's done to this point. I think it's really exceeded many expectations, maybe even the expectations of some that support the PTI. It really is quite extraordinary.
Michael, I have to ask you a generic question which has been troubling many a mind in South Asia. With the main leader of the opposition party out of the equation, so to speak, how credible were these elections in your estimation?
Yeah, it's a good question. Absolutely. I mean, we all know what's happened over the last few months, and it hasn't just been one or two things. It's been 7 or 8 things. You talk about arrests of PML-N members, and you talk about the fact that so many parliamentarians from the PML-N have thrown their allegiances to the PTI all of a sudden. Right. You talk about the crackdowns on media outlets in Pakistan that support or that have been perceived to be providing too much coverage of the PML-N. If you put that all together, to me, that certainly suggests something troubling. Of course, it's very hard to provide any sort of proof, but of course, given the history of the army in Pakistan, this is an institution that does get involved in the political process. And of course, all that, and then the allegations that seemingly every party other than the PTI brought out on election day, it certainly suggests reason to be a bit suspicious. The optics certainly don't look good. But at the same time, unless you're actually there at a polling station to see what these parties are alleging happened, it's very hard to actually say if it happened or not. And let's keep things in perspective. Every time there's an election in Pakistan, the losing party always allege fraud, along the lines of what we've heard today. So I think it's important to keep that in mind as well.
Michael, I want to probe you a little further on what you said just minutes ago. Now, you say you're surprised that PTI of Imran Khan won this many seats or leads as of now. But are you at all surprised that Imran Khan could emerge as the winner and probably the next Prime Minister of Pakistan, given the fact that he's seen as an army proxy by many around the world?
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly, if the PTI, under any scenario under which the PTI were to win, Imran Khan would become the prime minister. And, it's an interesting question as to what the army really wants. And, many have argued that Imran Khan is essentially the military's choice. They see him as the leader that could be most useful to the army. That may be true, but others, including me, have suggested that if Imran Khan really does become prime minister, couldn't that perhaps become problematic for the military? Because what the military likes in Pakistan is to have a pliant civilian leadership that will essentially defer to the military all the time. And Imran Khan certainly has very close ties with the military, but he is someone that's not known for deferring to higher authorities. And so that raises the question that once he actually is at the top as prime minister, how would he get along with the military? Would he defer, or would he spar with the army? And would you have essentially recent history repeating itself, just like you had with Nawaz Sharif sparring with the military? Could Imran Khan turn against the military? I think it's worth considering. And it's a lot of speculation at this point, but it certainly is something worth keeping in mind.
Michael, besides being known as an army proxy, Khan is also known as a moniker of Taliban Khana. How will that play out when it comes to the Taliban, the counter-terror efforts inside Pakistan and in neighboring Afghanistan?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, the reason he's called Taliban Khan by his detractors is that he has very stubbornly opposed the idea of fighting against terrorists in Pakistan, and he's called for having peace talks with them. And, notably, right up to the moment that you had that horrific school massacre in Peshawar in 2014 that killed 150 children, he was calling for Pakistan to negotiate with the Pakistani Taliban. So he is certainly not the guy. He is not the prime minister that would want to call for a major shift in how Pakistan deals with terrorists on its soil. He's not going to be the one that proposes to the army, for example, that, well, maybe it's time to stop taking a wishy-washy approach to terrorism. Why don't we actually crack down on all groups, no matter who they target? That's not going to be him. And of course, Imran Khan, being a strong critic of the United States, he certainly would never want to be seen as doing the bidding of the United States. And, he has always essentially depicted any type of counterterrorism efforts in Pakistan as cases of Pakistan fighting America's war on terrorism, as if Pakistan didn't have its own war on terrorism to consider. So to answer your question, I think we do have to be concerned that for all these hopes in Washington, and certainly there in India as well, that Pakistan will crack down harder on these groups, whether they're the India-focused groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, or the groups that target Afghanistan like the Haqqani network. Imran Khan, to me, is not the guy. He's not the one that's going to be calling for a different type of position. I don't see that at all.
Absolutely. You make some very valid points there, Michael. But just to take on the point you mentioned in your intervention there, that Imran Khan may not do America's bidding. He's already said in an interview that he does not like Pakistan to be a hired gun for America and American troops in the region. Now, how will that play out in the Pakistan-US dynamic going forward, assuming, of course, that Imran Khan is the next Prime Minister of Pakistan?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that though they wouldn't admit this publicly, I'd imagine many U.S. officials would not want to see Imran Khan as prime minister, because I think they're a bit worried about him, given the rather harsh things he said. I mean, he's been said some pretty critical things about the U.S., even by Pakistani standards. I mean, you probably will recall a few years back he vowed to shoot down any U.S. drone in Pakistan if he were to be in power. Now, certainly, since he'll be off the campaign trail and in power, maybe he will moderate or tone down some of that rhetoric. But he's no pushover. And again, here, I think you need to look at the issue of the civil-military relationship. I would actually argue that the Pakistani army wants to have a workable relationship with the United States. It really values the arms and the money that it's gotten over the years from the U.S. And of course, U.S. security aid is currently frozen to Pakistan. The army would like that aid to be unfrozen. So I think the army may feel a bit nervous about Prime Minister going off and saying these really problematic things about the United States. Imran Khan has said that he would meet Donald Trump. I think the words he used were that it would be a bitter pill to swallow, but he would be willing to meet with him. And the United States, Washington would be willing to. They would tolerate him. And based on conversations I've had with U.S. officials over the last day or so, they've essentially said that they would be able to deal with him. And at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, it's really the army that the U.S. deals with in the relationship with Pakistan, not the civilians. At the end of the day, when you want to get things done in Pakistan, you deal with the generals. You don't deal with the civilians.
Absolutely. Michael, do stay on if you will. I want to take a look at the provincial election results in Pakistan. Now, first up is the Punjab province, which has 291 general seats. Being the most populous state, Punjab is the heartland of politics in Pakistan. The province sends more than half the lawmakers to the National Assembly and is historically decisive in the race. Punjab is witnessing fierce battle between Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz and Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Interestingly, PTI, which is leading at 122 seats, got only 20 seats in its kitty in the last elections in 2013. Now onto the battle in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, which is likely to choose Imran Khan's PTI. Now, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has a 124-member elected assembly with 99 regular seats, 22 seats reserved for women and 3 seats for non-Muslims. All right, moving on to the Sindh province of Pakistan. Now, Sindh is a crucial one with 168 seats. Here, the Pakistan People's Party has managed to retain its stronghold, but Imran Khan's PTI has made significant gains in the region by securing 22 seats as compared to just 2 in the 2013 elections. In the Balochistan province, the newly formed Balochistan Awami Party is witnessing a dream run in the elections. Balochistan is known to be the most volatile state in Pakistan. In the run-up to the elections, deadly attacks were carried out in the region that killed hundreds of people. All right, Michael Kugelman continues to be with us from Washington. Michael, if I can come to you one more time now. Let's talk a bit about what all this might mean for Trump's South Asia strategy in Afghanistan, particularly given the fact that the negotiations or the so-called talks with the Taliban are poised very delicately as we speak. What might be the impact of a government of Pakistan led by Imran Khan be on the proposed talks with the Taliban in Afghanistan?
Well, I would actually argue this is one area where the two sides are increasingly seeing eye to eye, the Pakistanis and the Americans. I think there's evidence to demonstrate that this recent ceasefire that the Taliban declared in Afghanistan, that Pakistan was actually very instrumental in getting the Taliban to agree to that ceasefire. I think the Americans do think that the Pakistanis are somewhat invested in trying to help get the Taliban to the peace table. And, now that the Americans have apparently decided to try to push for direct talks with the Taliban, then I think that Pakistan's assistance becomes ever more important. I mean, this is always the story of the U.S.-Pakistan relationship, that the U.S. always sees its relationship with Pakistan through the lens of Afghanistan. And this is why the U.S. hasn't wanted to just discard Pakistan. It feels that it really needs Pakistan to help it in Afghanistan. And with Imran Khan as prime minister, I don't necessarily think that that would change. I don't think there would be any sort of difference. Imran Khan, I think, would certainly understand and support the idea of trying to get the Taliban to the peace table. ultimately it's hard to know exactly what Pakistan wants when it comes to Afghanistan. One could argue they may derive benefits from having war continuing. But I do think that here you'd have a level of continuity. What we've seen over the last few months is Pakistan actually being willing to work with the United States to try to get the Taliban to the table. I don't see why Imran Khan would stand in the way of that just because of his hostility to the United States. I don't think that should be an obstacle. I think that this could actually be a bright spot for cooperation.
Michael, I mean, if as you say, the constant in all of this is the Pakistani army, the Pakistani deep state, should we at all expect any change at all in Imran Khan's foreign policy, be it the US, be it the war on terror, be it Afghanistan, be it the Taliban, be it China, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on it depends on his personality. It depends on whether he simply wants to defer to the military or if he doesn't. I think generally his own views on foreign policy, to the extent that they're formed, because of course, this is someone with no foreign policy experience at all. I think that generally speaking, his views align with the army. He said publicly that he would like to have more dialogue with India, which is actually quite striking. He said that a few times in recent months. I'm not sure what the army thinks of that. He has taken a bit of a he's taken a more critical position toward the U.S. than the army would like him to. But generally speaking, there's a fair amount of alignment. China, I think there's a clear, deep political consensus across the civilian and military board in Pakistan that there's a need to continue to work with China to the extent possible and to smooth out all these new concerns about the CPEC. So I think Imran Khan will be on board with that. The interesting thing on China is that Khan has said on the campaign trail that he would ask that a lot of these deals with China over CPEC be made public and be made transparent. That's interesting. That's something that the PML-N never had called for. I don't think the army would necessarily want to do that because they know that China would not want to do that. Though in some ways, Khan may have been telegraphing his willingness to go to the IMF to get a loan. This is going to be a big decision that the new government will have to make. If Khan were to agree to go to the IMF, the IMF would basically tell Pakistan it would need to be a lot more transparent about all of its finances, which means that the CPEC project would have to become more transparent, which may unnerve China. But I think that's maybe the direction they would go in.
Indeed. And Michael, since you mentioned about India, I want to focus on India a bit now. Imran Khan has used India to target Nawaz Sharif. His anti-India rants reveal his position. His close aides have openly done business with internationally designated terrorists and defended them. So let's discuss how this election will impact India. Imran Khan's PTI is emerging as the single largest party. If he becomes the Prime Minister of Pakistan, what would that mean for India? For one, the Indian government will have to deal with a completely unknown politician, an unknown entity, a man who is a far cry from being a seasoned politician like a Nawaz Sharif. Imran Khan has been his country's sporting superstar all right, but never held a position of power or a public office. Secondly, Imran Khan has blamed the Indian government for ruining ties between India and Pakistan. Khan says that India's current dispensation, that is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government in India, often makes Pakistan a scapegoat when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir. Now, during his campaigning, Imran rigged up Jammu and Kashmir time and again, and that would be a sticking point between India and Pakistan going forward. Even on the day of voting, that's yesterday, Khan targeted India and the Indian media, saying he was being targeted by the media in India as he was a nationalist Pakistani. But Imran is also known to be a player of convenience. While talking about Pakistan's economy, he had pitched resuming trade ties with India to fill the Pakistani coffers. A politician who could use India for his country's gain could spell trouble for the Indian government. As Imran Khan feels he's inching closer towards the seat of power, the PTI chief yet again blamed India and took a dig at his political rival Nawaz Sharif. Listen in. Now, in an interview accessed by WION, Imran Khan opened up on Jammu and Kashmir and India's role in ties worsening between the two countries. Listen in.
Kashmir there's a independence freedom movement going on in Kashmir, and India blames Pakistan for that. And so therefore Kashmiri freedom movement is an impediment between peace between the two countries, because the Modi government, Narendra Modi government makes Pakistan a scapegoat for what's happening in Kashmir.
So you're saying on the Indian part there's no will to settle this issue?
I think the relationship probably have been the worst since the Narendra Modi government came in, which is a very hardline government. And actually give full marks to Pakistan for trying to get better relation. But you see, as long as Kashmir is such an issue now because of this movement gaining momentum, and then the atrocities of the Indian troops, violation of human rights in Kashmir, then Pakistan is blamed, and Pakistan, on the other hand, has to support the Kashmiri movement, freedom movement. So that's the problem right now. But ideally, we should have peace with India, and the whole subcontinent is held hostage to the Kashmir issue.
All right, Michael, if I can come to you one more time. There we heard Imran Khan talking about wanting peace with India. Now, we've seen Prime Minister Modi invest a great deal of time, energy, effort into establishing a personal rapport with world leaders, including Nawaz Sharif. Remember the birthday visit to Lahore in 2016. What do you foresee going forward between India and Pakistan, given the fact that we have two leaders, Prime Minister Modi in India and Imran Khan in Pakistan? Can these two men get along?
Yeah, I'm trying to visualize these two men meeting. I mean, could you imagine? I just see it being a very striking encounter. I wouldn't know what to expect. Quite frankly, I really don't think we should expect much in the way of improving India-Pakistan relations, with Khan taking power over the next few months. And the reason I say that is more from factors in India than in Pakistan. I just think that with India's national election not too long from now, I just don't think it's the time where you'd have Modi decide to extend an olive branch once again to a new Pakistani leader. I think that, he's in full campaign mode, and I simply don't think that would necessarily play well on the campaign trail to try to engage with Imran Khan at this point. That's my sense. And also, as you noted, Imran Khan has spoken about the desire for better relations with India and for peace. But, what Imran and the PTI have been hitting on a lot over the last few months is that they want to, quote, resolve the Kashmir dispute. And, of course, I know that could certainly be problematic for India. So there's a disconnect there. So I'm skeptical that the India-Pakistan relationship will improve over the next few months.
All right, on that note, Michael Kugelman, thank you so much for joining us on this bulletin. Appreciate it.